Welcome to the ARKHAM Sessions. I'm Dr. Andrea Letamendi, joined by Brian Ward, and we are excited to be here for our 6th episode. We have gotten a lot of comments, interactions, questions, and correspondence over the last, I want to say about a month since we started this, a little over a month since we started this. So it's definitely been enjoyable so far.
That's right. It's been a pretty big week for us. We launched our very first couple of days on Twitter as the ARKHAM Sessions. It's at ARKHAM Sessions. And you and I both are interacting with folks on Twitter. So
right.
You can find the show at ARKHAM Sessions on Twitter. You can find each one of us at bward028 and at ARKHAM Asylum Doc.
And I definitely like the questions. A lot of times people will just ask me, what do you think about this character? What's wrong with that character? And I actually really do like that interaction. Sometimes I haven't thought about an aspect of a character or thought about a character deeply enough. And so it's definitely cool to get some suggestions and questions as we go along. So
yeah,
keep them coming.
I think it's going to be good. Very good. The interactions are great. So like she said, definitely keep them coming because we like addressing everything. That being said, also this week, podcast I was on for an entirely different purpose. It's called Screen Time over at 5x5. Was quite the success. I was down there with 2 other DVD and Blu-ray producers, Charlie De La Zarica and Robert Meyer Burnett. You would know those guys if you know any movie made by Ridley Scott. Charlie is Ridley's bonus feature guy. So all those fantastic documentaries on like the Aliens, Blu-rays and Blade Runner and Gladiator and all that other stuff. That's all Charlie's doing. Robert Meyer Burnett is producing the Star Trek The Next Generation Blu-rays. So all those bonus features are his babies. And it was a really fun podcast.
And you were there to talk about some of your projects like Power Rangers.
We talked a little bit about former projects like Gem. We mentioned one of the things I'm working on right now, which is Pee-wee's Playhouse. So it was a lot of fun, but I was surprised that the host actually asked me about the ARKHAM Sessions. He knew the show. And
that's cool.
We gave a nice little plug. So thank you to the podcast. If you want to take a listen, it's at 5x5.tv/screen time. And it's episode number 53, I Heart Laserdisc. And you should check it out. Let's go into episode 6.
Episode 6 is called The Underdwellers. Sometimes there's a hyphen, sometimes there's not.
You play chicken long enough, you fry.
Let's set the stage. We have a group of children going out into the city, stealing from the citizens, bringing it back to a curmudgeonly British man who believes
children are to be seen and not heard.
One might think that we're talking about Oliver Twist, but no, we're talking about the Underdwellers.
And the Sewer King.
Sounds boring.
Which is the villain of this episode.
Hot and boring.
That's right.
I'm just gonna put it out there. I don't know a whole lot about the Sewer King. I actually am even gonna say I forgot who the Sewer King was. It's been a long time since I've seen this episode, prior to this project. So
it's actually not a bad episode. I mean, it's
not too terrible.
It's an interesting episode. There's a lot going on in terms of psychology in this episode.
Oh yeah, I think when you see this as a child, and maybe this is why I didn't really remember it. It is a little bit, I don't know how to put it, like seeing other kids being neglected and put to work and stealing and maybe I didn't like Oliver Twist too much, but as a kid I wasn't really a fan of this episode. As I said, I didn't really remember it. But now, as we rewatched it as an adult, I would definitely say that it's a little more interesting. It has a more powerful punch. You definitely feel for these kids that are basically being enslaved by this man who has this Captain Hook-like look.
It's very piratey. It's very Captain Hook. He's got the red cape. He's got a very sort of piratey outfit. He's got the eye patch. The only thing he's missing is the hook itself. He has pet crocodiles, going along with the whole crocs in the sewer urban myth. And
he's an a-hole. I'm just going to put it out there.
He is. It is very Peter Panish in that you've got your Lost Boys, you've got your Captain Hook. In this particular case, the Sewer King is actually leading the kids. And that also makes him a bit like Fagan in Charles Dickens' Oliver Twist. You've got the Fagan character, you've got the Artful Dodger character, you've got Oliver.
Right, and all the kids are sort of tattered up in these, worn out clothes. They're clearly not well taken care of. They're malnourished. They're clearly neglected. It's unclear if they're being fed well. And they're laboring. I mean, we see them under. This is basically all happening under the city in these sort of different.
It's like the subway, the old subway tunnels,
right? And they're digging in with shovels and lining up, and clearly you get the sense that while they're very unhappy and almost at this point emotionless, there's still this sense of commitment and attachment to this guy and attachment to each other. And again, as if you see this as an adult, has a little bit of a different impact. Like,
well, he definitely plays on the abusive father mentality of,
I took you in when nobody else would have you. It is I who care for you. I who provide for you. And only I who knows what's good for you.
Because clearly all these kids are orphans. I don't think he's probably gone around and kidnapped kids and turned them into...
No, I get the sense that they're runaways or orphans, right, or, kids that he's found. He's not kidnapping them. He's sort of finding them.
Yeah, so
maybe they'd be homeless on the street, and he's sort of picking them up and giving them shelter and food. And he says in the episode,
I teach them a trade.
And, that's very Oliver Twist-esque. But that's his, that's what makes him the bad guy. He's teaching them immoral stuff, and he's also mistreating them.
Lesson number 1 is no talking!
And I imagine that this comes from a couple of different places. One, as the king, clearly wants no back talk. He wants no opinions from the children, no one to potentially cause an uprising. But also, as thieves, they really shouldn't be too talkative. They should be pretty quiet. They should be stealthy. So I get the sense that he isn't just saying it because he hates the sound of children's voices, but he's also instilling them with this belief that they need to stay quiet in order to survive.
Right, and when they're not quiet, he punishes them. And one of the punishments that we see is this tiny room that he locks children in one by one, and there's this light, extreme light.
It's a UV light, probably.
Right. So if you're used to, being underground 24/7, you're not used to bright lights. Being in that kind of room would certainly be like torture.
Yeah. There's a lot to play with in this episode. No,
don't say that.
Well, there is the Sewer King, which we'll touch on a little bit. There are the kids, particularly this one frog that is found by Batman. Batman takes him in and sort of gives him a home for a night,
right.
Gives him Alfred. Alfred is charged with teaching the kid how to eat properly, how to sleep. He's sort of given him the same benefit that Bruce had as a young child, and
right.
that is of being raised by Alfred, even for a brief amount of time.
And that makes sense because, when he brings him back in the Batmobile, he brings this kid back in the Batmobile, he tells Alfred, you need to watch him. You need to take care of him. he's not going to do it himself because he knows that Alfred is much better. First of all, Batman has things to do, but Alfred is much more equipped, patient, and experienced in taking care of this kid.
Okay, so we're going to talk about that in a second. You bring up an excellent point, and that's going to lead me to the third thing that we have to talk about, which maybe we want to start out with, and that is Batman, Bruce Wayne. So, Bruce does find this kid. They all think that, you know, there's talk around Gotham City of leprechauns. Mm-hmm. And even Batman himself believes that he may have seen a leprechaun, and really it's just a child in a green cloak. It's a little weird that Batman's like,
Leprechauns?
but he is. And he catches the kid, puts him into the Batmobile, which is craftily disguised as a dumpster.
That was weird.
And he hypnotizes the kid, basically puts him into a sleep.
Wait. Let's back up. In the Batmobile, this kid is in the passenger seat.
Yeah.
And as he's looking forward, I mean, he's a little bit in shock. He doesn't know what's going on. He's being taken by Batman in this Batmobile. And as they're, zooming through on their way to the Batcave, he's just staring forward, and there's this like hypnotic, circular, spirally visual technique that I guess is an aspect of the Batmobile. If
Batman is putting the kid to sleep basically so that the kid doesn't know where he's going. You don't want to show the kid where the Batcave is. So,
right.
But you also don't want to use like a knockout gas on a child. You hypnotize the kid, put him into a sleep. The kid goes to sleep, wakes up in the Batcave.
Crazy.
So Batman then hands the child over to Alfred. As we were just discussing, presumably because he was raised by Alfred and knows that Alfred can actually do a great job of raising the child.
Right.
But what does that say about Bruce?
He's busy. No one got time to be sitting there giving this kid food.
Okay, but you say that. You say he's busy. But we actually see what he's doing, and that is constantly watching via monitor.
He is.
Alfred spending time with the kids.
Yeah. We're supposed to be working.
I wonder if I was that much trouble.
Bruce isn't so busy. It's actually he's watching and taking a perverse pleasure in it. Like, he's chuckling, he's sort of laughing at Alfred's...
as we'll talk about in a moment, the kid's giving Alfred a hard time.
He's giving him a very hard time, yes.
So we see there's this kind of brief montage, if you will, of Alfred, serving dinner to this child who is actually stealing the silverware as he's giving it to him, trying to, put him into the bath, but he's resisting strongly. He won't get out of bed. So it's comical, as we see Alfred try to get this kid to do these daily activities. But for Bruce, as he's watching it, he's finding a little bit of pleasure in seeing Alfred struggle.
It is an overwhelming amount of pleasure that he is finding.
It's like the most fun he's had in a long time.
Yeah. And and I know that, God knows out of 6 episodes, we don't want to say that there's a 4th one. But there's a weird disconnect here where he's not only letting Alfred do it, but he just doesn't, Batman/Bruce doesn't really have this ability to connect with the child. He knows that there's a connection that's there somehow. He sees himself in the kid in some way, but he is actively distancing himself from this child.
And I would argue that I think he has to. I think he knows that he can't be the one to take care of this kid because there's a sense of self-protection, boundaries, some deliberate distancing, because if he were, I think this is really down to the core of why he is how he is, why Bruce is this disconnected, if you will. It's, if I do spend too much time with this child, potentially kind of parenting him or bonding with him or even getting to know him, and I think this is the key, getting to know this kid will later, it will put me at risk. It will make it more difficult for me to do my job later. I cannot have a relationship with this kid.
But everything we know about Batman suggests that this kid could very well be the next Robin.
Don't go oh no.
This kid could be the next
can't.
Robin.
So the entire time this kid was sleeping there at Wayne Manor, I'm thinking, where the hell is Robin? Is he in Robin's room in Robin's bed, like taking a bath in Robin's bathtub? Where the hell's Robin during this time? If I were Robin, I'd be kind of pissed. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
But we don't, I mean, it's interesting. We don't see Robin.
I think Robin at this point, because we've seen Robin once. We saw Robin during Christmas with the Joker. We've not seen him since. I get the sense that Robin is post-teen,
he's a little older.
Yeah,
So
I don't know that he's
hang out
necessarily Batman's ward anymore. I think he's probably off doing his own thing in Gotham.
So this is sort of like, could be the next Robin.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah, everything he's doing is setting us up to think, not that we do, but he's certainly setting us up to think that we've seen this before. Batman likes to throw kids into the Batmobile and then take them back to the Batcave, and next thing you know, they're superheroes.
Well, we do. I mean, it's very similar to, well, this was written much later, but All-Star Batman and Robin, when Batman essentially kidnaps Dick and puts him into the Batmobile, and he's Dick is kind of resistant, doesn't really want to be there, is a little bit disobedient, and he gets Alfred to take care of him. But that's later on. So all
right, so I am sticking with Batman's inability to hang out with people. And I'm going to chalk this one up to...
All right, you stick there.
4 out of 6. Batman has antisocial personality disorder.
Oh, my God.
Now let's move into the opposite extreme. The other father figure. Let's talk a little bit about...
Fagan,
the sewer king.
Yeah, clearly he's... this guy, he's taking these kids in... under this idea or ideal that he's teaching them better ways, that he's providing shelter and food for them, that he's a caregiver, if you will, to them. And what we end up seeing is a large group of children that almost seem like they've lost their will. I mean, they really do seem kind of zombie-like, filing in and out of rooms, willing to endure some of this maltreatment and punishment.
It wasn't so dissimilar from Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. I mean, you got that sense. You got the kids underground. They appear to be mining for some strange reason. I mean, we never establish what it is they're going for, but they are clearly digging with, hoes and pickaxes and,
It's really not a new trope.
No.
I mean, in fact, historically, this is not completely fictional either.
Right.
With some of the history before child labor laws. Now we know now that this is abusive, and this is clearly this guy is maltreating these kids, and we only get to see certain glimpses of it. We're not really aware of how much this guy is hurting them. He could be physically abusive. He could be Yeah, we've not seen him hit the children. We see that his form of punishment is usually sticking them in a room with bright light, which they're clearly not accustomed to. Without question, this is child emotional abuse. This is child neglect, because clearly they're malnourished. They're not getting, they don't have enough resources. He's not taking care of them properly. Perhaps child endangerment, because he's, sending them off into the streets unsupervised. And of course, his disciplinary methods, are considered abusive because they could be harmful. Like, depending on the impact of some of these light-related, not light, but light.
Yes.
Sorry.
I almost get the sense that this is not the first person to have this life of the sewer king. You almost get the sense that this guy could have potentially been a child in a similar situation, simply because he's clearly not right in the head either.
Oh, no, he's not.
I mean, the way that he talks, his methodology, the fact that he is a receiver of goods, of stolen goods, like, I don't know. There's something about it that seems to me like maybe this was taught to him,
right?
As well. So
I mean, it's tough because you get the impression that he doesn't necessarily think that he's wrong in this. That
right.
This is his, set of morals, that he potentially, like you said, was taught the same lessons and the same manners in which to survive. And that he could very well believe that if he didn't do this, these kids would be out in the streets alone and could potentially starve to death.
Yeah.
Or would never learn how to take care of themselves, and wouldn't be as well off as they are with him.
My beloved children.
It does seem like he's their caregiver and teacher, and he's essentially, he believes that he's protecting them and engendering some kind of skill in them so that they can survive.
So let's talk about the kids. Kids brought up in this sort of situation. What have you, as a psychologist, seen? Because you've dealt with a lot of children, abused or otherwise, traumatized children. Describe what these kids are going through.
Well, certainly we see some signs of abuse just from Frog, the little guy that Batman takes home with him. So when Alfred is trying to take care of him, get him out of bed, get him into the bath, these aren't things that this kid's used to. So he's actually, to us, he's showing this odd behavior, being very resistant, not understanding what's going on, at sometimes being playful, climbing under the bed and trying to get away from Alfred. At other times, he just looks confused, like he doesn't know what's going on. Later, when he's served his meal, he's actually stealing the silverware, stealing some of the dishes and plates, and kind of has this mentality that he has to take and engage in this thievery rather than help and participate in what Alfred is trying to do. I mean, Alfred is trying to teach him how to help him around the house, how to participate in the family, at least for that day. We don't get the impression that he's going to be there for long, but he invites him to help him with the dishes and so forth.
I'll wash, you dry. So
when you see this kind of odd, confused type of behavior, you get the sense that this kid, may have had a history of neglect, trauma, certainly may have never, it's questionable, has he ever seen, a bathroom with a bathtub in it? Has he ever slept in a bed? He may not know how to react or behave in these situations.
So is that a problem for him?
Like a disorder, like a childhood disorder?
Yeah.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, certainly disruptive behavior could be problematic. When I say disruptive behavior, I mean essentially a set of behaviors characterized by not following rules, being resistant, disobedient, defiant. I mean, we know kids like this. This is not completely uncommon for kids not to behave well. But because this little guy is so disorganized and so odd in his behavior, that may be a product of his maltreatment, of the abuse that he's experienced. And this may be what's been called disorganized attachment or disorganized insecure attachment, which isn't a disorder. It's just a way of saying that he has not been able to develop a secure attachment with any one caregiver. And so he's showing this sort of bizarre, odd, inconsistent responses to someone who's trying to care for him or parent him, albeit temporarily.
Okay, so normally at this point I would ask you what you do to reform or treat the sewer king, but in this case I think it's more important to ask you what you would do to treat the children.
Right.
We see them being carted off by what I'm assuming would be like social workers or someone from family services. What happens from this point going forward?
Well, certainly there are cases where kids have recovered from this kind of trauma and neglect. And, one thing that's really important for these children is to develop a secure attachment. So this would mean a trusting relationship with an adult, being able to experience that feeling of comfort and safety, and really being able to depend on an adult. And it actually depends on how old these kids are in terms of how they'll have opportunities to do this. But foster parents, adoptive parents, there can be plenty of opportunities for these kids to develop some secure attachments and kind of learn that the world doesn't have to be unsafe, that the person that takes care of you doesn't have to be the person that hurts you. And I think that's the story that they're living with right now. That's a story that has to be changed. It's a story that has to be certainly understood as part of their history, but moving forward, we basically need to ensure that they're able to learn a different story, which is, I'm going to be safe now. And what happened to me was not because of me. It wasn't, because every parent is mean to me or because the world is unsafe.
So normally around this time in the episode, we would associate the week's villain with a very real person from history to sort of set it into a basis of reality. And in this particular case, rather than pick on the kids, I think what I'm going to do is pick on the sewer king, who I think probably most closely resembles a man by the name of Ike Solomon. Most people would know Ike Solomon as the very real man on which the character of Fagan was based in Charles Dickens' novel.
Oh, that was a real person?
Yeah, it was a very real person. He was a fence. He was born in the east of London. He was actually, he had a very large family. There were 9 children. He was one of 9 children. And his father actually taught him how to be a fence, a receiver of stolen goods. So he basically grew into this criminal lifestyle, and he basically became the biggest fence in London. He had a shop. It was basically a jewelry shop, but it was also considered a pawn shop, and he used this as a front. And he had this system of people who would bring him stolen goods. And as a result of his infamy in this role, Dickens actually based the character of Fagan on him. This person definitely had his fingers in the criminal lifestyle in London.
I see. Please, sir, may I have some more? But no more sewer king because he was a little bit boring.
It's not that boring, but I will give you more, but you'll have to wait until next week. Because oddly enough, man, this was a quick episode, but we're done for this week.
Okay.
Next week we've got, actually it's one of my favorite episodes, POV, which we actually see the same series of events through the eyes of 3 different people, and Batman is certainly involved. So cool. We get to check that out. You will like that one because Montoya is one of the 3 people.
Yes.
So we should all gather next week. We got some cool stuff coming up soon. A bunch of people are helping us out with advice on how to get the ARKHAM Sessions onto iTunes, so you should definitely check that out, or keep an eye out for that very soon. I think we should have a podcast on iTunes within the next couple of weeks, I would say at the most.
Until then, remember to check out the episodes on underthemaskonline.com and on YouTube, just searching the ARKHAM Sessions.
You can also check us out on Twitter at ARKHAM Sessions. Andrea's Twitter handle is
At Arkham Asylum Doc, and Brian's is
at bward028. Until next week, I'm Brian Ward.
I'm Dr. Andrea Letamendi.
Saying, see you next week, guys.
Bye-bye.